should be good. Give me one more sec. Okay, Holly, I think we're good to go.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the third meeting of our 27th Spending Affordability Advisory Committee. Today, our theme is economic development. As we mentioned in our first meeting, this is one of the most effective, although it's going to take some time, strategy to promote the county's development and increase overall pie of the long-term revenue growth of the county there. So today we have a keynote speech there from Angela Cabalon, our chair of the Econ Task Force that the county established through executive order, that they have some initial findings, recommendations, and also there will be business panelist discussion and also Economic Development Authority CEO Jennifer Jones is going to provide an economic update. So we just I learned that actually the business panelists, some of them have to leave shortly. So let's start with the business panel discussion, followed by Angela for econ and then EDA. Thank you. Let me log off, and Jennifer, please feel free to introduce the panelists.
Thanks, Holly. So if panelists, you can introduce yourselves. Dave, if you want to start, and Dave and Christy, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure.
That'll be great. And also Abhishek. So Dave, go ahead first, and then state your name and where you work.
Sure. Dave Shimarelli. I work at Key Commercial Real Estate and Key Commercial Electric, so commercial real estate broker and electrical contracting.
Christy, everybody knows you, but go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Christy Simon. I'm the president and CEO of the Howard County Chamber of Commerce.
And thanks for joining Abhishek. Can you state your name and your company and what your company does?
Hi, my name is Abhishek Rege. I work with Vasoptic Medical. We are a medical device company with products in ophthalmology and intraoperative neurosurgery. We're located at the Maryland Innovation Center, Howard County's incubator, and I'm glad to be here.
Great.
Welcome.
So,
thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thank you. I know it's early. So I just wanted to kind of start off with the current landscape. We all know everything that's been going on this past year with the federal impacts. And so if you could just, discuss if this has had any impact on your business or anything, or if it, or not your specific business, what you've been seeing in your ecosystem in terms of federal layoffs or just, Howard County residents, having to, get laid off work and then get laid off from the federal government and then trying to find additional work if you have information. So I'll start with you, Christy.
So we have had a number of members that are struggling due to the federal government layoffs. It's kind of a domino effect. Like a lot of our restaurants are struggling just because, if the head of the household just say gets laid off or terminated from their job, they're not eating out, they're not spending in the community. So we're seeing a lot of issues with all different types of industries you wouldn't naturally first think of. We also, as far as the chamber itself goes, have lost a number of members just because of apprehension with people spending money and businesses kind of conserving right now because they're not sure what's going to happen with the federal government and with different types of spending. So I'd say there's just a little bit of hesitation out there right now due to all of the layoffs. I know that when Ryan logs on, he is with Edwards Performance Solutions. They do federal contracting. I know they've had a lot of layoffs and things due to losing some of their contracts. So I know he'll touch on that as well.
Great, thanks. Dave, have you seen anything in the commercial real estate sector?
Sure. Well, I wouldn't say anything specifically since the beginning of COVID. I guess over the last year, the government contracting sector, it looks like there's been about somewhere between 15 and 25% layoffs due to everything that's happening in the economy. But outside of that, I'd kind of just echo what Christy said.
Abhishek, are you is your customer the federal government, or are you more of like you sell to other companies?
So it's actually both.
Yeah.
We have an interesting model here where we do a lot of R&D, and most of that R&D, about 80% of it, is funded using federal grants. Most often from the NIH. Right. This is through their SBIR, Small Business Innovation Research Program, and that has funded our effort all the way from conception to bringing out our first product in the market through FDA clearance and so on and so forth. And it helps us continue to support our R&D as we develop newer products as well as expand the scope of use for our current product. Right? Now,
So,
what has happened recently is that the SBIR program seems to be in a bit of jeopardy, right? Ever since the after the government shutdown, when sort of the everything reopened, the SBIR program unfortunately has not been reauthorized yet, right? So it was not part of the budget deal that went through, and so that entire program is in limbo currently. Now, I believe that Congress is working hard on fixing it, and we are optimistic that it comes back sort of stronger. But there is a lot of uncertainty around that program. So I have 3 grants that have been submitted but have not been reviewed yet, and I'm not sure if they will be reviewed or whether they'll be deferred to another cycle. Right. And so that has had a significant impact on companies like ours. And there's a lot of companies that rely on the SBIR program, especially early stage companies. Right. So that is sort of one somehow it has not been covered as much in the news either. And it's somewhat languishing. So in that regard, I can imagine that much like us, I mean, our ability to hire is severely restricted because of lack of clarity on what funds we will have available in the coming years. And
Got
I
it.
imagine a lot of small businesses to be in the same situation.
Great, thank you. I think Ryan has joined us. Hi, Ryan. Let's see.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us this morning. So the first question was, what have you been seeing in terms of federal impacts on your particular business or company, your organization? So if you could just introduce yourself really quick and then talk a little bit about the federal impacts.
Sure. Well, thank you. My name is Ryan Miller. I'm the Director of Organizational Resilience at Edwards Performance Solutions right in downtown Columbia. So I apologize. I had some login challenge. I didn't get to hear what others said, so I guess you get sort of a completely unbiased perspective. But yeah, so do you want me to just keep going, Jennifer?
Sure. Yeah, just go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah, just give a
so
brief overview. Yeah.
So yeah, I imagine like many other small businesses, this last year has been quite challenging. Some pretty significant cuts to some contracts that in the federal space that have been in place for quite some time. So as an organization, a business, we've had to make a lot of adjustments. Fortunately for Edwards, we do both government contracting at the state and federal level, as well as have a pretty robust commercial practice as well. So we're thankful for that. A lot of that commercial work is in the cybersecurity space, and have been able to shift a lot of, honestly, a lot of our personnel and a lot of our focus to, the parts of the business that are most successful. So really looking forward to, hopefully some thaw around the commercial work. I'm sorry, around the federal work in the area, and really hoping for that to occur in the coming quarter.
So what, and all of you guys can answer this, but what, based on what everybody is saying, there is like definitely some severe impacts, but your outlook for the next 2 years. I mean, are you seeing, because I'm hearing different stories, some people saying, oh yeah, the contracts were taken away, or they were frozen. Oh, now they're starting back up. I mean, I'm hearing, different things from different businesses. So your outlook for the next 2 years, I mean, what are you guys thinking in terms of your specific sector? You want to go first, Dave? Go ahead.
sure. No, I've been hearing that there's a lot of opportunity available. So, of the federal contracts that were stripped away, they're going to come back for recompete. And I think some of the contractors kind of looking forward to it. So,
Okay. Christy?
Well, I can speak a little more generally, not specific to government contracting. But I would say, we're seeing a good number of businesses closing or merging. Some are selling to larger corporations if they were a smaller family-owned company. So we're seeing a good bit of that right now, we feel like, but we've also had a ton of new members join. Jennifer, I know you're seeing this as well. Lots of ribbon cuttings and businesses opening right now. So there is a lot of optimism, I feel like, in the community, especially in Howard County. A lot of our really established businesses have been doing very well and haven't really suffered as much as some of the newer businesses. I know we've all seen some restaurants and different types of businesses start, and within a year they're closing, which is really disappointing. But some of our I'd say our established businesses are much more solid and stable right now. Yeah, and folks are struggling, I would say, still with issues with the port and the Key Bridge and transportation issues, some supply chain issues, and then we're just hearing about a lack of affordable housing in Howard County, as well as a lack of childcare as well. So those are two of the issues we are working hard on at the chamber right now.
Thanks, Christy. And just Dave, real quick, back to you. I mean, not necessarily to Christy's point, federal impact, but just generally, what are you seeing like in the commercial space in terms of like leasing and things like that?
oh, as it relates, sure, as it relates to real estate, what I would say is your trophy Class A space is not available. It's just fully leased. When you get into kind of the not as nice Class A stuff or aging Class A stuff, you start to see a bit of vacancy. And when you start to get into Class B and C office space, there's just tons of vacancy. 40 to 60% vacancy in those. Warehouses are completely fine. They're 90% occupied. Retail's doing just fine, but the office space in general has a big dent in it that was not there post or pre-COVID. Pre-COVID, we were probably in the 92 to 97%. And now overall, we're probably 80 would probably be a stretch to say that we were if you kind of took all the different classes of office space and piled them together.
Okay. So so Ryan and Abhishek, if you want to talk a little bit about your outlook and what you think
Sure.
the next 2 years looks like.
So I think I have two answers. One which is specific for my business, which I think we are very optimistic, and that's mostly because of the resilience and productivity of my team. And our constant sort of push to look for alternate sources of funding, prioritization of our goals, and so on and so forth. So for example, I mean, we've started focusing more on marketing and sales of our existing products rather than looking at R&D into the next batch, right? We're also discussing strategic partnerships with major companies, right? And so that's just sort of us responding to the challenges and aligning ourselves or aligning ourselves to what we expect is the next wave, right? Now, broadly for the industry, I do see again a partially sort of optimistic but partially sort of bleak outlook in that it's the convergence of what is going on at the policy level with AI, and I think that is going to really redefine our the way we think of work and productivity, and sort of much to David's point of office space versus sort of productivity and so on and so forth. So I think that is a bit of a different sort of equilibrium that we will find in the coming years. And I think it is we need to be prepared as soon as possible for what lies ahead.
Okay, great. Ryan, do you have anything to add?
Sure. Abhishek used two of my favorite words, readiness and resilience. So I think I'd probably just follow up by saying, it's almost like a trick question. What are the next 2 years? Of course, we have to have a sort of a North Star and a target, but I think one of the things that we've been doing, and I think a lot of the other organizations that have been navigating through all the turbulence, has been to really shorten the time horizon and continually reframe, continually, reprioritize, and make the time horizon just much shorter. Like not just annual planning, like quarterly, monthly, and constantly reassessing what information you have about what's in front of you, and making those little adjustments, as opposed to like really big swings and pivots, which are, the larger the company, the more challenging that can be. So, the 2-year plan's got to get broken down into at least like 8 plans, probably more.
That's a good point. So for the last question, is there anything for either? Oh, so Barb has a question. One thing, Barb. I just wanted to kind of like end on one thing, and then we can go into questions. Just generally speaking, is there anything that you guys have that you think Howard County could do better, like Howard County government, in terms of business support, or anything like that? I mean, we obviously have a lot of initiatives. The county executive is very focused on economic development, but is there any 1 or 2 things you think we could be doing that will help, generally speaking, not just for federal impacts, but just generally for the business community?
I'll throw out something again. It's something that Abhishek just mentioned that got my wheels turning on, just going forward. We've had a lot of success with new partnerships. And I think one of the things that we've always appreciated are different events through economic development, through the chamber, just to bring together like-minded, optimistic organizations that are looking to do new kinds of work, maybe a little outside of what they've done historically. So I think those opportunities to meet other local businesses, to partner, to go after opportunities that they might not have previously done on their own, I think is appreciated and will continue to be appreciated.
Yeah, and I think also, I think it's a good time to point out that the Maryland Innovation Center, which is an incubator, run by Howard County, is fantastic and doing a great job at really helping a lot of client companies. So, without suggesting much else, just hats off to your team for doing that, right? One thought, and again, this is not a solution, but it in the current environment, it is very difficult to contemplate international partnerships, simply because of the uncertainty around tariffs and a lot of again sort of central policy. And so if there's anything that can be done to soften that, would be highly appreciated, because that's a huge sort of opportunity that currently is a non-starter, simply because of the uncertainty, right? I mean, once what tariffs, what the tariffs might be and what that equation might look like, you are in a position to discuss opportunities. But in the absence of that, it just becomes sort of one big sort of opportunity just off the table. So if there's anything that could be done to smoothen that out, or to bring sort of certain parties to the table, that would be fantastic.
Great. Thank you, everybody. So does anybody have questions? I know, Barbie, I think you had your hand up. If anybody has any questions for the panel.
Yes, this is Barb Glenn. I'm representing Farm Bureau. I appreciated Abhishek telling us about SBIR. And when we lose our SBIR funding, you mentioned alternative funding that you are seeking, and you also mentioned partnerships. So thanks for the comments from Ryan and you about partnerships. Amen on international. But Abhishek, can you address the strategies that you have with respect to alternative funding?
So it really boils down to partnerships, right? We are trying to, work with other companies, with larger companies, delivering sort of projects for them while advancing our technology further, right? So instead of receiving a grant from a federal agency, this becomes sort of a contract from another organization that is has deliverables, but those deliverables also further your mission of developing products and so on and so forth, right?
Right.
So that is what I was referring to.
Okay.
Of course, I mean, a clear alternative is to bring in private funding, and quite honestly, I mean, that could also be potentially facilitated to a certain extent by excellent teams such as yourselves.
Right. Yeah, excellent. So I was wondering, yeah, if you were pointing to venture capital or what. So thank you very much.
So I think venture capital is also in it's challenging to raise venture capital today,
Right.
given sort of the interest rates and sort of everything that's going on around. I think they are facing challenges as well.
Yes.
So it's percolated to every level in some sense.
Thank you, Abhishek.
Sure.
I think
Thank you.
Jackie
Yeah,
has,
Jackie, Jackie, you have your hand up.
okay.
And then
Yes, I do. I just had I think Dave mentioned about the real estate and all of that. I think my question is probably to you, Jennifer, about gathering spaces, because I understand, I've been reading a lot about folks who've created companies, and look, the last one I've read was Steve Jobs, and how the benefit of having people gathered in one place and create the creativity that comes from just being in the space. And I think with Dave, he was talking about the class A, B, and C spaces. My question is, are businesses just pulling back from rental spaces because of the fear of not being able to, to support, you know, that that amount of real estate, or and what's the impact? Because I think there's not just real estate issues, but it's impacting the ability of businesses to be able to create organically. So I guess it's a
Yeah,
statement and a question.
that's actually a really good question there. So, just from my experience, what I could tell you is that what we're seeing is a lot of companies, it's not that they can't afford the real estate, it's that they're just finding a different avenue to use it. So I'll just give you an example. A company of 40 or 50 employees would typically lease 10,000 square feet of office space. I think that they're realizing that the climate of employment is changing such that, not everybody's coming to the office on a regular basis. So rather than having 10,000 square feet, they may only need 3,000 square feet because they have so many people that are, coming in 1 or 2 days a week. So many people are fully remote, et cetera. And that's part of their hiring process. And that's what they have to offer in order to get the good help right now. So what you're seeing is these people that came out of Class B and C office space that were paying, $20 to $25 a square foot, but they're paying on 10,000 square feet. And they're like, well, screw it. I just saved a whole bunch of money because I only need 3,000 square feet. I might as well go get the nicest thing that I can. So that when people do come to an office, there's a little bit of a wow factor there.
Also, if I may add to that, not all of this is employer driven. It's also employee driven,
Very
because a
good
lot
point.
of employees prefer to work more flexibly from their homes or remote locations, rather than have to commute to work every day, right? And so I think COVID forced an experiment on us, which is does work from home work. I think the answer was yes in a certain percent of industries and companies, and the answer was no in certain others. And I think that's the sort of equilibrium that we're falling to at this point, and that will likely continue, right? And especially sort of with AI, that might also sort of find another equilibrium in the future as companies start thinking more and more in terms of remote employment, as well as much like a gig economy, looking at project deliverables rather than necessarily who is doing it. So I think that's evolving.
That's a really good point, saying that it's an employee-driven requirement. And I would love to hear from both of you and maybe Ryan about what are you guys seeing from the work from home, are you seeing effects as it relates to your employee output and maybe collaboration and even like the generational handing down of knowledge from senior employees to junior employees?
So that's an excellent question, and the answer is again somewhere in the middle, which is, we are a company that does a lot of hardware and software, and so all our employees come in to the office, right? We came back to the office like within 3 months of the pandemic, and we've been operating out of office, right? Because that's what works best for us, right? But I can imagine sort of there are job functions and industries where you don't have to necessarily interact with everyone else on a very continuing basis, and video conferences just about provides enough interaction to do that. Now, what that also does for employees is gives them a lot of flexibility in terms of if they have children or if they have to be home for some other reason, to get some of that done. And so a lot of employees do prefer that. I mean, and also sort of just to avoid that commute, right? And so we've seen, I have in my network, I have seen people quit when asked to come back to work. So so that's what I mean when I say it's not all employer driven. It's also employee driven, right? And people do prefer jobs where they do get that flexibility rather than where they don't.
So I think
Abhishek, you have to have a very strong performance evaluation program to back up your flexibility for your employees. And I don't say that in a derogatory way. I just say it for the health of the employee and the company. So I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do that.
Sure.
I think Holly, did you? I think we need to wrap. I
Yeah,
think you want us to
just one more
wrap up.
question.
Yeah. Mhm.
It was touched upon a little bit from some of you. It's about the boost of AI. I just want to ask you all, and also Christy, maybe through your communication with the chamber members, did you see any more widespread use of AI and that caused productivity gains, or at the same time, there's any new issues emerged in that regard? Thanks.
I can share that a lot more of our companies, I think there was a little bit of a delay with some of our companies diving into the use of AI. Now, a lot more folks are using it for all kinds of different purposes. I will say I've heard some minor issues with companies having to deal with employees overusing AI and kind of just taking the content and using that for purposes where it may not be completely accurate to their situation. So I think a lot of employers are encouraging their staff to use AI as much as possible to save time. I know our own team, we did an AI training for our group and have been using it quite a bit to read draft communications and things along those lines. And it has saved us a great deal of time. So, more and more companies, I feel like, are coming out with AI policies and things like that for what you can and cannot use it for, which is just going to continue to evolve.
And Steve, I think I saw you with your hand up. Did you have a question?
No, not really. I was just going to add to the conversation because by the way, happen to manage corporate real estate for a government contractor. So, but just, I was want to say all the points are very well taken. And I'll just say something to what Jackie was talking about. I was at a conference back in 2024 and somebody said something that stuck with me ever since then. And what they said was the return to office wars are over, hybrid won. Because the two things that people do not want to do is they don't want to go back to being in the office every day. And they don't want to be in their house every day. Period, hard stop. And the reason hybrid was always going to win ever since teleworking came out as a term 25 years ago is it works for the employees. And oh, by the way, it works for the companies. And to Dave's point, that's what we're doing in my company. When our leases come up, we're looking to reposition ourselves, reimagine our space. We get smaller and nicer because we take advantage of, saving money on the square footage and saying, okay, now we can get nicer, whether it's move to Class A or dress up our Class B. So, I mean, it's people say, oh, COVID created this. It did not. It's an accelerant. It was always heading this way. So That's all. Just an interesting conversation, but I just want to add my insight to it since I'm now doing my day job.
Thanks, Steve. So I think I don't have any more questions. If there's anything anybody online wants to ask the panel, otherwise we can just thank them for their time. And I appreciate all your insights.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yep.
And our next item will be
All right, thank
Angela.
you.
Yeah, thank you all.
And
Thank you
panelists,
very
feel
much.
free to panelists, feel
Best
free to jump
luck
off if you
on
have
the
things to do.
business.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Just confirm you said to go ahead and hop off.
Yep. Thanks, Dave.
You
Okay.
can, but you can stay.
Have a good one, guys.
Because our next
I'm gonna figure out how to
speaker, Angela, is going to share about the county's perspective from the task force about how to promote economic development. So you're welcome to stay if you want. Hey, Angela.
Thanks, Holly. As Holly mentioned earlier, I'm Angela Cabellon. I'm the Chief of Staff to County Executive Ball and also the chair of what is the Economic Competitiveness and Opportunities Now Task Force. What I'm going to say at the outset is that Jennifer's panel really coalesced it as far as giving us insights on what the Econ Task Force was working on. In many ways, the themes that each of these businesses brought up are exactly, what both SAAC and what many of the county leadership and the county executive and the Econ Task Force were discussing and really planning for. Some of the things that the businesses talked about was the fact that, there's been sort of this uncertain outlook, regarding continued business impacts. We're seeing some of it, but there continues to be uncertainty looming. We've seen that, just even from Dr. Ronnie's presentation, as far as the data supporting that. We've heard a lot and just got off this conversation around workforce. So workforce came up very much so, mainly because of the direct federal impacts to Maryland and Howard County. But you heard the nuances around workforce, whether it's just around how we work or the impacts of workers or how we as a county need to align with industry. There are many nuances around what we're talking about when we say workforce. The businesses also talked about, and, particularly Christy, you mentioned this with the chamber and your members, what the resident and family impacts are, whether it's around childcare or other what we call social determinants of health. That was very much salient. And finally, there was a great conversation around AI and modernization, because that's just something that, came fast and furious in the midst of all this, and a major factor that we can't ignore. So we'll go ahead and start with the overview. Really, when we think about overview, if you can advance it, Patrick, we're thinking about how we transport ourselves all the way back to a year ago. I mean, this is what we've been living, but we know that, right as the federal impacts began, particularly around the executive orders, the presidential executive orders, that left government really grappling on what they mean, what the direct impacts really were. On top of that, there was the establishment of the Department of Government Efficiency, or the federal DOGE, department, right? So, and those impacts, which we saw with mass layoffs, and also, the downsizing of federal government, as we heard, were the direct impact. We also knew, and this is mentioned in the Econ report that will be released when the county executive has his press conference. We also knew, as I mentioned, that SAAC had already, and this is stated in the report, that there was already looming economic uncertainty, both with the state and some of the state impacts. So all of these, factors were playing into, what do we do? So the county executive, in addition to having a direct response to what was going on, whether it was, through town halls or, looking at and grappling with budget, we realized that we needed a group to really lean on to give us, as you will, like a roadmap. I think Ryan said it best when he was asking, really, what is our North Star? What's going to be on the horizon? And asking ourselves, what are the small adjustments, he said, that we can make? And essentially, that's what we're planning for. So we established this, the county executive established this, and the charge was to recommend policies, regulations, strategies, and actions that were very, very specific to Howard County and our economic competitiveness and growth, while keeping in context, the state and the federal government. There was great alignment with SAAC, not only from its memberships, but also from government and the business community and a lot of community stakeholders. And we met regularly and rigorously for 9 months, which also included robust summer committees that really honed in on recommendations. In parallel, the county executive also established a $2.5 million fund, a federal impacts fund that were specific to really, use toward an initial implementation of some of the emergent issues that were occurring, but also econ recommendations. To date, we have directed about a half towards the things that have been mentioned, childcare initiatives, workforce, business initiatives, as well as foreclosure prevention. So these are the things that were just very, very emergent, and we continue to look at what are some of the other ways that we can direct and kind of prepare for continued impacts given the uncertainty. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see that we had top recommendations. There were 25 recommendations, all not just 25 recommendations, but a number of sub-actions. And they were, the top ones really are speaking to what is in county government and this administration's immediate control. What are we already working on? Things that have already been mentioned, things that we know that could be achievable. So the first top recommendation that we've spoken to this morning is really around expanding those workforce and entrepreneurship support for former federal employees, federal contract, and skilled professionals. This speaks to the direct impact of the downsizing of the federal government and how we equip and retool, our workforce. So there have already been initiatives that are in place that we'll speak to. And you heard from EDA and Jennifer and their team in some of the things that they've been doing, whether it's the GovCon workshops or targeting specific federal government employees, former federal government employees, to put them on an entrepreneurship track, which they may have already had small businesses, and now it's to make them robust. But those are some of the themes. The second is looking at, not just educational partners, but all partners. But this does certainly speak to the collaboration with education partners with a focus on youth workforce and apprenticeship efforts toward, looking at employment gaps and high demand industries. Here in Maryland, we have what's called the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. SAAC has gotten briefings on the blueprint, as well as a lot of the education components and discussion that's really happening. So we're seeing this as a complete asset, that as Maryland has its blueprint, that we can look upstream to leverage this growing talent pipeline and do it early. The third is really speaking to not just streamlining internal review processes across government for the sake of, but looking at the larger modernization and downstream impacts when we do that. This is one of the biggest pieces of feedback from our businesses, is that when businesses are starting, growing, or continuing, or strengthening, or looking at a closure, there are a lot of processes on the front end, continued and throughout, that if county government becomes more efficient and leverages this modernization, then we see that as a direct impact to businesses also being able to scale up quickly and get their feet running in the county. So it's a larger kind of impact, not just about process, but about what this means for businesses. And also related to that was us optimizing our permitting and planning through technology. So we are happy to say that through the use of us looking at AI tools, this is something that we're looking at for the sake of helping accelerate business. And then finally, we heard this, whether it's through Abhishek or others, really about what does that look like around the digital service and promoting increasing digital access and competency. This is not just with workforce, but across the board. So if you move on, I will talk about the different committees. We had 4 committees. The first one was workforce and education. And here you'll see a lot of the findings that drove the workforce and education recommendations. The things that were really important to call out were the fact that we do need within our workforce system really strong data-driven or data-informed, people-driven, insights that are at this time we're able to see live. We were able to get that, from the economic pieces with Dr. Rani and Jennifer Jones, and also Stephanie Adibe. But we recognize that both the state and the local could benefit for increased data analytics. I've mentioned this, and so have the businesses, that having a strong industry alignment with workforce is really key to meeting employer demand. We've talked about youth and looking at just stronger college employer connections. And one vehicle for this, which the county executive has done well, County Executive Ball has been called out as an apprenticeship, I want to say czar, but it's, he has been asked to be a spokesperson across the state on apprenticeships because of the work of our workforce and even our government in establishing apprenticeships. We recognize that there are high skill, but also entry level, and we need both. And so this is one where Howard County, we have a high skilled, highly educated workforce. And then we also have the strong pathways for those who are exploring, and we need the high demand trades as well as new ways of thinking. So that's apprenticeships. And then finally, looking at the impacts of the needs for housing, transportation, and strong financial stability for workforce successes. So the recommendations, I'm not going to go through all of them because we will share the report once the report is published, when the county executive has his press conference. But you'll see, and all of the recommendations really speak to the findings of really having that strong alignment. So you can go ahead. And we call out specifically again, HCPSS, the community college, higher education, because there's such a strong partnership already, as well as we need that cohesion and alignment to be able to implement sector-based, youth initiatives to really build and ensure that the talent pipeline is robust. And just one that I'll call out here is just, again, just cannot emphasize enough the conversation around housing affordability. This is one that's just a larger conversation, so we really needed to talk about it. I mentioned that we have had directed economic assistance and foreclosure prevention efforts during this time, and we'll continue to see this. It's a big conversation in Maryland as well as the nation. So it's something that we'll call out here. Next, you see our committee on supporting business. These findings really recognize that now is the time. We have a strong market position, here in Howard County, not just with having such a high income base, but top schools, but our location will continue to be an asset. EDA has done a fantastic job in working with our regional partners and becoming a designated tech hub. So this is something that you've seen EDA really leverage in a big way around cybersecurity initiatives, cybersecurity, and supporting entrepreneurs, as well as us being on the map. County Executive Ball has gone to Europe and Canada to really look at expanding cybersecurity. And we find that this is something that we have to focus on as far as ensuring that we're supporting our businesses, both internally with government as well as externally attracting, larger businesses and assets. Some of the synergies that we've talked about early on, just as a top recommendation, is looking at these process challenges. The business community has talked a lot about what do we do with where there may be regulations, things that are causing some delays, things that feel unclear. And so I think that, coupled with increasing engagement around policymakers and the business community, were really important. And these findings also fed into the recommendations that I'll go over quickly. So these, I rolled it up into the top recommendation around improving processes. And so again, whether it's with project docs or some of the communication pieces, these recommendations speak to that. We can move on. Again, one thing that we cannot emphasize enough is just really aligning ourselves with the current economic development strategy and promoting that. And that is, EDA has a strategic plan that we continue to ensure that there's a lot of promotion alignment on, as well as what is the sector support, as well as the infrastructure planning, ensuring that we really align to that as well. And then again, these are harkening back to permitting and planning, and us, focusing on having a robust permitting and planning system, which is in development. All right, now we have modernization and innovation findings. I am Brandy Gans, work through this, these recommendations and findings, and I'll just say outright that AI dominated our conversation, because how could it not? It dominates, a lot of what we're thinking about, how we should adjust, not just as a government, but also as businesses. And what we realized is that what we could focus on was looking at what many have heard as smart cities. And so we couch a lot of these recommendations around what we would dub as a smart county. So these recommendations, that was a strong framing for us, is looking at technology as the catalyst, looking again back at the data. We know that with AI is as good as its data and as good as it's what it's being asked to do. And so without, clean and excellent data, data is a lot of the foundation of our modernization. We're looking at infrastructure. When we say smart county, it's looking at, all the ways that we have worked to that. Kind of Executive Ball has done a lot around, climate resiliency, whether it looks like more solar infrastructure, but also looking down to, how that plays out in safety and with our Department of Public Works and how we can be more agile in that. And then finally, what does resident-centered innovation look like to really focus on not just having the infrastructure, but ensuring that our consumers can interact with that infrastructure in a digitally friendly way. So again, these are all recommendations are rolled up. So you'll see, I'll just emphasize that our report is about more than 50 pages long because it really thoroughly goes deeply into the recommendations. But these again are kind of harkening back to the things that I just summarized. And then we'll just keep going. And again, I'll call out again safety and public health. We can't take that for granted now that we have experienced the pandemic. So having modern and innovative systems, we saw what the COVID pandemic can do as far as disruption, but we saw what modernization can do to help facilitate solutions. So this continues to be strong as it does, impact our economy and ensuring our economy remains resilient. And we are in the process, and we will see this play out in the next couple months as this administration and team kind of works through really layering in AI. We're doing it in small use cases in our government, but also we're looking at how to ensure that we are anchored with cybersecurity measures to enable that. AI, Holly asked that question to the businesses, how, if anything, is this ensuring more productivity, or what does that look like? AI is a powerful disruptor in many ways. So, we'll continue to build out and this is what businesses, including CAs at the table. Thank you, Sean. I know you're on here. Really having those conversations of how we can continue to be synergized, not just around what we're doing, but around even the policy and how we're thinking about AI. So with that, I just want to thank a lot of my colleagues across government, many of the directors, as well as our senior staff. Led these committees, played a huge role into providing, a lot of the analyses, and thank many of the members of SAAC because your input really informed the report, as well as, how we should be thinking about this as a roadmap. So I'd be happy to take any questions.
I think Jackie has her hands up. Thank you, Angela.
Yes, thank you, Angela, for this presentation. Just had one question. I think it was on maybe slide 7, where you were talking about the supports. Let me go to it. Expanding. Oh, you were talking about transportation, and you said jobs and economic development. I would want to add for educational support as well, because we've got, especially with students doing dual enrollment and apprenticeships and internships, many students are limited by the opportunities they can take advantage of because of lack of transportation. So I would just add in there, if you all could, consider, educational support as well when it comes to transportation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that feedback, Board Member McCoy. We are really happy to have Superintendent Barnes as part of the conversation as well. And, both he and I and the county executive have and our CAO have talked a lot about transportation. Just to underscore your point and double underline it, we recognize that, across the board, it's an imperative, not just to facilitate, young minds and the talent pipeline, but also to ensure that, when we get our workforce where they need to be, that right there is a great foundation for a stronger economy.
Is there any other questions from the committee? All right. Thank you so much, Angela.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, everyone.
thank you. Now, Jennifer, let's go back to you, and thank you for being patient. But also, I have to say, like, I think you did an excellent job hosting the panel. You asked a lot of great questions, which kind of speak on all the key questions I actually personally have for the business. So thank you. Now back to you.
Thank you. So I think Patrick is managing my slides here. Okay. So it looks like it's, thank you, great. All right, so we talked already about the recent federal impacts, but just, generally, since February of 2025 through the end of 2025, November, the unemployment rate has gone up from about 2.7 to 3.9. It's still relatively low in terms of historical measures, but it did tick up, and I think we're still going to feel the effects of some of that to come this year, 2026. As we were talking about Doge on the panel, but there's about 10,000 contracts worth about $71 billion were either interrupted or paused or whatever last year. And so that did create an impact on the businesses. And I also just want to mention that, for small businesses, SBA reset their small disadvantaged business goals from 15% back down to 5%. So there are a couple of things that have gone on that I think have, impacted small businesses, but the panel has expressed that they believe that they're somewhat optimistic about the outlook. So that's good and that's encouraging. Next slide. So, as I'm talking to other economic development professionals, I think we all agree. I think that the federal uncertainty is, it's not, episodic anymore. I think there's like a structural reality that we're just going to have to move on with. And especially in Maryland, in Howard County, of not relying so much on the federal sector. I mean, that's easier said than done, but maybe, Ryan mentioned, Edward Performance Solutions has a federal side and a commercial side. So, just trying to diversify revenues as much as you can is important for our state. Anytime you have workforce disruption, it creates this regional economic risk. And I think in talking to my colleagues across the state, we're all working to kind of shield Maryland in our counties as much as we can. But some of the good things that are happening, I think, local innovation is accelerating based on, some some of the panel was saying, or Angela was mentioning, some of the federal workers, decided to, take their buyout, or they got laid off and they decided to start their own business. So people are thinking about, how can I become an entrepreneur? How can I be an innovative person in this ecosystem? So I think that's good. And I think that, our entrepreneurial ecosystem has been strained since COVID. So, that's in terms of, making sure that, you have funding. I mean, a lot of the federal monies that were kind of pushed out during COVID are dried up. And now we're in this kind of crisis now with the federal government. So the ecosystem is strained, but I do feel like more people are becoming entrepreneurs and want to do that. So, I feel like our role at EDA is to preserve these gains and build resilience for our county businesses. Next slide.
I just
You
want
see
to
the slide
chime in a
before.
little bit on Jennifer, because what both the panel and also you mentioned rightfully is about the federal impact on that. And local level, it's a little difficult to get the data because there's a delay on that. But on the state level, we just learned from the state controller's office, they got the data about 25,000 people, not counties, Maryland residents have been laid off since January. And that number increased a lot from September. Between January and September, the state said their Marylanders lost about 15,000 jobs, but between October, November, that added another 10,000 there because the separation mostly started at the end of September and there's additional impact. So that's roughly 9% of all federal employees in Maryland. So that was just quite a big impact on that. Again, it will take a while before we figure out how much is going to be the county people there, but it's real as to the point of Jennifer, but we are locally holding strong, try to do what we can. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Holly. And yeah, I mean, I think we're going to continue to see impacts throughout this year. So thank you for that. You've seen the slide before, but just basically showing, you know, our industry sectors and professional, scientific, and technical services, you know, equate to about 22% of our businesses. And we have a very diverse economic base, which is great. And you know, having a high percentage of businesses be in the, you know, professional, scientific, and technical services is good for Howard County. It's high wages. It makes us competitive. You know, this slide definitely shows that we're diverse and that we continue to kind of retain that high wage sectors in the county. Next slide. And this is just another way of kind of showing this. So what basically this shows is that if you look at the upper right-hand quadrant, it shows that, you know, over the last 3 years, you know, total employment has increased, and the average wage has increased in those sectors. And so on the previous slide, you saw how we have our main sectors, and this is how they're broken out by quadrant. So that quadrant is doing great. You know, professional, scientific, and technical services are in there. So we're gaining employees in those sectors, and we're also maintaining our competitive wages. And then on the left side, you see that although some of these sectors have reduced employment, competitive wages still are being maintained. And some of this on the left-hand side in this quadrant in terms of finance, manufacturing, a lot of that is consolidation and acquisitions at the national level. So as you know, a lot of, for instance, finance and insurance, a lot of banks, you know, countrywide have consolidated branch locations. They've closed down different locations, but they're still in the county. So I think that trend is more like a nationwide trend of consolidating banks. And then in terms of manufacturing, we've had several high-profile like acquisitions where, like for instance, Cisco acquired a couple of food manufacturing companies in the county. And obviously, when you get an acquisition like that, you're going to get some, you know, people not, you know, retaining their jobs. And so that's I would say that in general, our industries are showing resilience and doing really well. The one industry that you see, the ag sector, at the lower right-hand quadrant. You know, that is under some strain, but I do believe that the new legislation that was just passed in terms of permitting more agritourism is going to help this sector, because I think the sector has been at a competitive disadvantage because counties surrounding us have a very robust agritourism sector, and we haven't historically had that. So this is going to help, I think, some of our farmers get additional revenues and become more competitive. Next slide. So this shows the change in employment in Howard County businesses relative to pre-pandemic employment. And as you see, Howard County has, you know, the businesses have rebounded slower than US and Maryland in terms of like county business employment, but it has rebounded just barely. We'll continue to look at that. But this is through, I think, let me look at this. This is through April 25, so it is a little bit of a lag. But you can see that, you know, we have, along with the state, rebounded generally from, in terms of county employment, rebounded since the pandemic. Next slide. People continue to start businesses, so this is great. You can see the increase there. We have about approximately 12,000 businesses in the county, and you can see the increase. I mean, part of our job is to make it easier for people to start businesses. We want people to be able to come say, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur, start a business. What do I need to do? And get started and get that on ramp pretty quickly. Next slide. Our commercial tax base continues to grow. It slowed down a little bit between 24 and 2025. However, if you go to the next slide, you'll see that there is forecast to be some construction going forward this year, so which is great. And a lot of that's Trade Point Atlantic, the new you know, commercial hub that's on Route 1, where that's like a you know, $100 million investment, and it's going to bring on some more construction and growth for us. So that's great. Next slide. These are just some of the examples of recent activity. As I talked about, Trade Point Atlantic, it's great that that's their first location outside of Baltimore. So that's great. Excited to be in Howard County. And then we had a couple other I just think I see a 1 minute, Todd. And then there's a couple of other great businesses that have decided to move into Howard County. Iron Circle, for instance, moved from Florida, and they're moved their headquarters here. They're in downtown Columbia. And then we have Feast and Fettle. There are a company in Rhode Island, and they've made their first move into the Mid-Atlantic states, into Howard County. They're in Elkridge, and that's been a great business. Todd, go ahead. Did you have any questions here?
I did. It's back a couple of slides. I'm just
Uh-huh.
trying to infer something.
Mhm.
One more and one more, I think. Yeah, and then the one previous to this. So, and the slide, yeah, this one here shows county business employment basically, recovered, but anemically.
Right.
And then the next slide
Mhm.
shows all these new companies,
Mhm.
all these new firms. It's, 1,500 more
Mhm.
new firms against a basis of 10,000. So 15% increase in firms, but basically no new jobs, no new
Well, a lot of
employment.
Yeah, well, so just generally speaking, I'll show you a lot of the businesses in Howard County, as you know, are like less than 20 employees. And
Right.
a lot of establishments are like like solopreneurs or two
Yeah.
people. You know what I mean? So you have a lot of people starting up, they have one or two employees, and then they kind of will expand and grow. But there are a lot of solopreneurs. I would say that the companies in that two to 10 employee range are the ones that are a lot of the growth that you see there.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So I guess what I'm trying to understand is just, can I infer then that our average employer is getting smaller in terms of the number of jobs that it's providing? If
Um,
jobs are total employment is flat and we've gone up by 15% in the number of firms, does that mean we're getting smaller,
well, I
even
think,
smaller? Because we've
well,
always been, kind of a small employer county.
yeah, we're always been a small employer county, and I think that I think that although our employment is kind of growing slower, a lot of the firms are still there. So they're doing more with they're doing the same amount with less people since COVID. That's one thing that's happening. Um, So, I mean, I don't have that slide in this deck here, but there is a slide that shows the increase in the number of, shows what the percentage increase or decrease in the number of firms and the increase or decrease in the number of employment. And you see in some of these sectors, the employment number is going down or staying the same, but the firms are going up. So I think since COVID, people a lot of companies are getting better at doing. I think people quit and they got better at. They didn't hire all those people back. Some of them got better at doing the same job with less people. That's going on. And then you have firms coming online, but it's just solopreneurs, one or two people in the company as to start. So, but I think Howard County has always been that way, honestly. Um,
Yeah, it's not a criticism. It's more
yeah,
a matter of just recognizing
yeah,
that the reality of the market in Howard County is that we're small and getting smaller, as opposed to we're chasing flagship brands and trying to attract them to the county with larger scale employment. And the data seems to be reflecting that.
yeah. And I mean, to a certain extent, yeah. And if you go back to the recent activity slide, so if you go forward, keep going. Keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah, right there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, to your point, that is true, but we do still attract new businesses still. Like I said, and you can see the job numbers are kind of small to see, but the Trade Point Atlantic is going to be over the next several years going to be up to 500 new jobs. You have Iron Circle, which is a cyber AI company that headquartered here, just moved here, 200 new jobs. Feast and Fettle over the next 3 years, another 200 jobs. So we do have that attraction, but yeah, you're right. Howard County has always been more of business retention, expansion, preserving our sectors. But we some of those here on this slide are some big attractions.
Jennifer, this is Barb. Excuse me, I have a question. Within the definitions of the various sectors in the quadrant slide, I think that agriculture is general, hunting and fishing and fisheries is generally more of the blue collar, in the field, farmer facing, seamen, people on the water working. But I'm really excited about what you just showed us on the logo slide. Even though Todd's saying we're not attracting the big firms, I would like to point out, just for the benefit of everybody, is that, let's see, 4 of your big logos that you've attracted recently are food entities. They're about agriculture. And so you may not define them in this dot that's in the lower right, but I'm going to say we have that dot big time in Howard County. So you got Feast and Fettle, you got Saval Food Service, Expectation, and Soft Stuff. All of those are around our food and food production sectors. So just I'm going to point that out. So I just wanted to say that.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm excited about that for Howard County.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you.
So let's see if you, right after the slide, the next slide. Okay, so this is basically, one of the big groups in economic development is our business development team. They're the ones that are boots on the ground, and they hear from they talk to existing businesses all the time, and so they're definitely the team that's heading our business expansion and retention and attraction sector. So that previous slide is business development. And some business finance folks. So, we're really proud of like all the, the wins that we've had over the past year. I would like to just highlight a couple things. So one of the things that we want to do is make sure that we cultivate our sectors that are, that we're known for. So we have our Cyber Howard Accelerator that's taking, startup cyber companies that have products and taking them through like a 12-week, I would say, boot camp with industry professionals to kind of give them feedback on their products, to kind of hone their products, make sure that they're, as good as they can be, so that they are, ready for commercialization. And so we do a lot of these accelerator programs in some of our main sectors to kind of help these startup entrepreneurs, to give them a pathway. And then you heard some of the panel, they were talking about international and things like that, and what international things would help with the current companies. And we do have an MIC global program, and from our trade missions to Canada, we went to Europe, and then I went to Asia with my head of business development. And what we're doing is just making people aware of Howard County, letting people know if they want to, come into the US, this is this perfect spot to do it, right? So it's a great soft landing spot. We're strategically located. We're close to the policy in DC, and also close to cyber assets like NSA, Fort Meade, that thing. So, our business development team is working hard on all of these initiatives. Next slide. They also, panel also mentions our Maryland Innovation Center. Abhishek is one of our companies, and same concept as the cohort, but they're here in the building, about 40 companies here in the building permanently, and we basically give them workshops. They have networking. They're around other CEOs that can help them, refine whatever service or product they need to do. Entrepreneurship is lonely, so it's always great to have your colleagues around you that you can ask questions. And so the Maryland Innovation Center team is doing great. And this just says a little bit of our stats. We've kind of revised our mentorship program and have a lot of more mentors in here that are used to have run a startup, grown, scaled it, and then exited. So ultimately, that's what a lot of companies want to do. They want to like grow, and they're serial entrepreneurs. So we want to help them do that. Next slide. I want to touch on a little bit about our newly designated enterprise zone. So I'm sure some of you read that we designated the zone in the end of 2024 with the Department of Commerce, which is great, and it includes the Gateway District and part of Route 1. And I think this has been a really great catalyst for growth and expansion for current companies. This enterprise zone gives some incentives for companies to keep jobs here and expand here. So just to give a couple of examples, there, like, as you know, they're like mainly in the food manufacturing sector, but a lot of these companies are doing well and they're trying to grow. And what we don't want, if we can help it, is for them to have a location here and then say, oh, well, Howard County doesn't have enough space, or they don't have what I need. So I'm going to have one location here, and then I'm going to, expand into another county and have a second location. I mean, that happens still because you do have to look for space, but to the extent that we can kind of consolidate locations here and grow and retain jobs in the county is great. And this enterprise zone has been great to do that. I mean, it says it's over 2,300 acres. And like I said, it's right off of 95. It includes Gateway and Route 1. Next slide. And then just from just over the past, I think, yeah, so December 2024, it was newly designated. And then around June 2025, we opened up applications. And in like 6 to 8 months, we've gotten a pipeline of companies that are looking to expand and grow. And so this represents like current deals plus pipeline deals. And it's already over 80 million of capital investment. For over 400,000 in square feet, and you see the jobs numbers there. So I'm really glad about this enterprise zone. This is our first enterprise zone. Every other county pretty much has one, so we're a little late to the party, but I think this is really going to help catalyze growth in Gateway and then just generally. Did you have another question, Todd? Or is that?
Yes, I did. What are the exact advantages of having enterprise zone attached to these locations?
So what enterprise zones do is, so as you know, okay, well, let me just back up. So you know what we're doing, the Gateway, we have the Gateway Innovation District, we have the Gateway Plan, right? Gateway has been a business park that's been the same for, I don't know, since the early 70s, late 60s. And what we're trying to do here is spur growth and, in order to do that, sometimes you have small businesses here looking to expand, and it's hard for them to do. Like, remember, we're a county of small businesses. So this isn't like huge corporations trying to, do this. Like, it's hard for them to expand and grow with the foundation that we have. So what's good for us is that, we give them incentives based on the number of employees, new jobs they tend to create. We give them incentives based on that. And then it starts off like 80% credits, and then it goes down over a 10-year period, and then it's done. And then we've grown jobs that way.
What do you mean by 80% credits? What does that mean?
So when you have a building and then you redevelop it and repurpose it and expand it and do renovations, your assessed property value goes up, right? And so you look at the base of your assessed property value and how much it went up. That increase, you're going to get incentives on that increase in property value, that tax credit for the increase in property value. And then that's going to descend over the 10-year period.
So can you make that concrete? I mean, I know what the words are. I don't know what the numbers are.
If you have a property and you're a business and you want to expand it, and your property is assessed at $1 million, and then you do a bunch of renovations, hire people, and then you do a bunch of renovations on the property, and the assessment goes up to $2 million, correct? So you get your tax bill and your assessed property value goes up to $2 million. There's an incremental increase of $1 million, right? Are you following me? Yeah.
Yes.
And so then you have percentages over a 10-year period. So like on that incremental 1 million, you have 80% tax credit goes out, and 60%, 40%, 20% over a 10-year period. So you're basically getting, you're getting a tax abatement on that incremental value. You still have your base, but then you're getting a tax, on your incremental value. Meanwhile, you're hiring people, you're expanding jobs, and then after that 10-year period, you're done. So it's used to incentivize people to expand and grow jobs in Howard County.
So instead of paying property taxes on 2 million, you're paying it first on 1.2, then 1.4, then 1.6, and
that's
okay.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And it's actually worked really well. Gateway hasn't had a lot of growth and activity in a long time, and then this pipeline shows that this does work. So I'm excited about that. And like I said, other counties in the state of Maryland, most of them have enterprise zones or opportunity zones, and we don't. This is our first one, and I think based on our pipeline, it's working well.
And is this administered by ADA or by the county? That's number one, and then number two, and then I'll mute myself. Is this happening? Is this happening looking during the decision-making process, or is this happening after the fact, where they've made the decision and they realized, oh, hey, we can apply for enterprise zone tax credits, so let's do that, even though they've already made the decision? Yeah.
No. So you can't. So first of all, you're not eligible unless you're, you're expanding after the designation. So you can't. It's not retroactive. Like, so if somebody's been here, you have to be a new renovation after the fact. After you have to be like a company in the zone after it was designated. First of all. So is that what your question is? So it's attracting new people to come into the zone and expand.
No, I'm thinking like I have a building there.
Mhm.
I've made the decision to increase the size, improve the building, whatever. I'm already in that process. And then I go and I realize that, hey, I can get a tax credit. So the tax credit just ends up being an incremental benefit to the decision, or is it integral to the decision?
I think it's
Meaning
integral
that
to this.
it
Yeah, I think
is.
it's
Okay.
Yeah, I think it is. And just to your other question, this is a Maryland State Department of Commerce program. So they lead it, and then they work with the local jurisdictions, which is, and then the economic development organizations in the local jurisdictions to administer the program. So it's their program, and then but the companies apply on our website, and we kind of work with them, and then work with the state to get it approved. Next slide. And then I just want to talk a little bit about some other things that we're doing to support economic growth. We have our market at Kaplan's, which is great for the retail sector. So this we had over the holiday season. We did this with the county exec's office, and basically just took the old building in Kaplan's. County executive's office got a grant from the state, renovated it, and we helped local retailers that don't have storefronts to kind of come in here, and they kind of had space in there to kind of sell their business. So it's really great in helping that retail pipeline. So I would say that we don't just do tech; we do all sectors where we can to help small businesses grow. And then the second thing that I was going to say in terms of exporting economic growth, what I've already talked about is enabling the agritourism legislation, which I think it's going to be really good in helping farmers stay competitive, as I stated. And then two other things that I'll also just mention in terms of supporting economic growth: the child care grants that we've given. I've talked about that last year, but county executive allocated $1 million of grants to child care facilities to grow and expand their seats. And so we administered that, and we're having a lot of great, so they got the funding like middle to late last year, and many of them are already under construction, expanding seats in the county, which is also important to economic development. And then the last thing doesn't come from our team, but I just want to echo that housing is very important for economic development also, especially attraction work businesses. So, how we can support Department of Housing or anybody else doing these new housing projects, because it's important for economic development. That's what people look for when they move into the county. All right, next slide. And then we had talked about our federal worker pathways. So like I said, there were several businesses several federal employees that decided to leave or got laid off and decided that they wanted to start their own business. And so the Maryland Innovation Center has been working with these entrepreneurs. And it's about 15 companies that are former federal workers that are, working to, be an entrepreneur. I guess they felt, like I said before, working for the federal government is no longer the safe bet that it used to be. So it felt like I think a lot of them felt like if I'm going to take a risk, I'm just going to do it on my own and start my own business. So, we've had about 18 workshops and over 1,000 attendees geared towards federal workers that are transitioning into entrepreneurship. And I think we're going to continue to see that grow. Next slide. And these are just three examples that were in the federal government and moved over. These three represent former workers in FDA, NIH, and USDA. So they've really just jumped in and started their businesses, and they are a great part of our community. Next slide. And these last couple of slides, I just want to briefly mention that, we have loan programs. Our business finance team runs those. One of the things that, businesses always need is access to capital. And we fill a gap because a lot of businesses that come to us aren't necessarily creditworthy in terms of bank standards. And so we look at different things and take, and kind of we have a little bit higher risk tolerance on companies that we want to help. And so we often partner with banks, and banks often refer people to us to kind of loan funds, and so that they can expand. Maybe it doesn't meet their criteria. So I think this is a really great program, and it's helped a lot of businesses expand and grow where they couldn't get bank funding. And then the next slide shows another fund, which is our micro lending fund, smaller dollars, so $20,000, $30,000 loans for equipment or whatever to small businesses. A bank might not want to take that up because it's too small for them. They don't, it's a lot of work for that amount of money. So we've kind of filled that gap, and it continues to grow, and it's great. The county executive provides the funding for the LIFT fund, and he's been very supportive. And then the previous page, the Catalyst Fund, that's from the state. That's the state provides that fund from the casino money, the video lottery terminal. We get a percentage off of that. And the next slide is just a summary. I just want to let people know that for every dollar invested in economic development, there is an average return of over $9. So I firmly believe that when the county or Maryland is struggling, you kind of have to grow your way out of it, and economic development, along with our partners, are working hard on that. And then, as Angela was saying earlier, we are going to be going into planning our next strategic plan. So this is the last year of our current strategic plan. So this year we're going to be going into our planning for our next strategic plan, which is 3 years. So we look forward to that. And these are some of the things right here that we're going to be focused on. But we in planning our strategic plan, we do meet with stakeholders and get information from the community. So I look forward to that and reaching out to some of you. Thank you.
Hey, Jennifer, this is Barb Glenn. Can I ask one more question about the loan programs?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So my question is, are either the Catalyst Loan Fund or the LIFT Fund, are they directed toward specific age groups, like less than 35 entrepreneurs, or younger entrepreneurs? Just curious.
Yeah, we've had younger people get our loans. It's like we're not focused on one age group. If that's your question.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
I'd like to ask a question if I could.
Sure.
What's the repayment rate on your loans, and what is the average interest rate?
So it depends on the different, so I think the Catalyst Fund, and I'm going to check with my business finance director on that. I want to say the loan repayment is, I think maybe it varies from like 3 to 4 or 5 years. And then the interest rate is usually about like a point or a 1.5 points below bank interest rates.
Okay, so it's below interest rates, but then what about your defaults?
Oh, we have a pretty, it's like less than 3%.
Good. Okay. Thank you.
Jennifer, I want one quick question.
Sure.
Not that I need it today, but if you could provide the actual underlying calculations on the claim that every dollar invested in economic development results in $9.18 in state and local tax revenue, that would be helpful. Just so we understand the underlying numbers.
Yep. And I'll just give you an overview of that. So I'm a part of MEDA, which is their state economic development entity. And what they do every year is they collect data from all the counties in terms of, how much investment you put in and things like that. And they do the calculation at the state level. And it's an average across all the counties, but I can get you that. Just so you know, MEDA does this every year. Yeah.
Thanks. I mean, it's quite a money machine, if that's true.
That's all I have, Holly, if anybody has any questions.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Thanks very much, Jennifer, and also very much appreciation for all our speakers today. Just a quick follow-up from last meeting. During DBZ's presentation, there are a couple of questions asked there. So after that, actually, Jeff, the speaker, did provide two additional slides on that there. I believe Paul already shared at the SharePoint, but I can put very quickly on the screen. It's this slide. I think there's a question about what's a number beside this different age groups there in the multi-decades growth number. And so he inserted a slide of slide 10, which is already shared with the group on that there. It was has a data behind it. Again, we're a number of people, so it will help the committee in putting together in the report if need to quote anything. And specifically, the bottom one, the age 65, as we all know, has been growing very fast. If you look at that in 2000, 65 plus is only 7.5% of the population. As of today, it's more than 17%. It's expected to reach 20% in 2020 by 2030, which is kind of tripling what's where it was in 2000 there. And a couple other group actually have been stable or have been dropping in specifically the age 5 to 19. That group actually will be smaller than 65 plus group by 2030 and dropping from 20.5% years
Excuse me,
ago
Holly,
to
are we supposed to
18%.
see the presentation? Because there's nothing that I'm seeing.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought I already shared. Thank you for putting that there. So this is the slide that the committee asked for number, and this is what Jeff put there. So this is the number I just talked about. Thank you for clarifying on that. That's the number I was just talking about. If you compare 2000 group versus 2025 and 2030, you can see the trend. We as a community have been aging and rapidly and continuously. So these dynamic or this demographic change over time has been reshaping and will continue to shape the overall policy and even budget allocation. So I just want to share with you. He also added a slide. This is slide 10 added. He also added slide 26. I think it's in response to the question about age restrictive units there. 26, I think. Yeah, that's just responded to the question. But anyway, you will find it in the share folder. I just want to share with you. The other question I think committee asked is about the school surcharge, because I share with the group that year to date, school surcharge has dropped by more than 60%. So there's a question about over the years, is it mostly square footage or unit square footage, etc. I took a quick look the other day. It's both. So over the last several years, total transactions has been dropping, total square footage of new residential construction has been dropping significantly, and the per transaction square footage also has been dropping. I just haven't got a chance to put together any data. So in next couple of weeks when I come back, either on the capital budget designated funding or revenue, I will share with the group.
Holly,
Yeah,
can you go back to the first one, the age distribution and the demographic slide that you kind of started
yeah,
with?
and I apologize because I didn't realize I didn't share the screen fast enough.
Was it?
So this is the age group.
Yeah, this one.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure I'm reading it right. So that if we go and look at Jeff's working age population, which would be 20 to 64, those two together. So in 2000, that would be like 61% of the total is working age population, right? And then in 2025 today, it's
57. So it does drop.
57. So it's down. Right. That's a pretty significant drop in 25 years. Right. And then looking forward 15 years, we're seeing it go down to 55%.
Right. And thank you for pointing out. So essentially the working age people as a group has been dropping and looks like continue to drop in that.
Right. And then
so it's between 20 to 64. Yes.
And the school age the 0 to 4 preschool is 7.4 to 5.2, and that seems stable. But the school age population has fallen basically, I mean, on a steady decline, but it's fallen from 22.5 to 16.3 projected in 2040, right?
Right.
Okay.
0.4 also dropped slightly from 7.4 to like 5.4-ish on that. But anyway, I think it's just a lot of change over time as a community.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have been
But
experienced challenges in different fold there, but aging is one of the big takeaways on that, along with some other age groups changes.
I'm wondering though, wouldn't this smooth out a little bit more by 2050? Because if we look at the way the county has grown and that the people that moved here in the 70s, actually it was a younger cohort of people that were attracted to what the new city was about. And at some point, as we mature, it seems to me the population would become more balanced in terms of age. Seriously, if you think about like everybody I knew in the 70s were my age. We were the 30s and 40s. You couldn't pick up the flyer and see an obituary. Seriously, for weeks, there wouldn't be obituaries in the flyer. We didn't have even have a graveyard out off of 108 until like the 80s, you know. So I'm just thinking that at some point, this has to smooth out and look more like a regular community in terms of your age. That's my thought.
It's probably a reflection too of over what's happening nationwide. It's not just Howard County or Maryland, or I mean, it's
That's
a
a good point.
demographic problem, or issue, I should say, nationwide, not just here.
But maybe compounded by the way we grew.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. We started with a very young community when we started growing, and now we're not growing
Right.
very fast, and we're not turning over, so we're getting older and older.
But it won't at some point it get level out a little bit. I mean, those.
I don't know. I think it's probably a reflection of a big demographic trend. You're probably right to a certain extent. I don't know.
I would caution, this is Richard, I would caution that the multi-year projections for population are very mathematically and high level driven and not really building on local land use or things like that. So the trend, aging, correct. The trend of working age population, stable to mild decline. But lots of things can change with land use turnover and other kinds of things, especially in a small area. I would just caution, and I think projections through 2050, not to pick, Barb's idea. Everything you're saying is completely accurate. However, it's very subject to change on the ground, is all I'm saying. So if people start moving to Florida earlier, you're going to get younger, more working age people, and the school projections would be wrong. I just caution from drawing, even though I use these projections, I would caution you from saying, other than the broad trends, huge implications.
Yeah, Dr. French, that's absolutely right on that. I mean, more the trend is clear, and the more near future, multi-year, that's probably more reliable. But beyond a certain years, like 20 years in the future, etc., there are some other factors that could play a role. Things could evolve.
I would say even 5 years out, things could change radically in Howard County in terms of turnover. So I would just caution from general trends, accurate, aging, fewer young people, bigger burdens on working age. But things will probably brighten up in the near term in 5 to 10 years rather than out. So, and that's an optimistic statement from a pessimistic person. So,
I mean, looking at this, your point well taken, Richard. But if you're just looking at the number of working age people, even if we're looking at the next just 10 years, which is a planning cycle basically for development purposes and for county housing purposes and so forth. If we're looking at just 25 to 35, I mean, it's basically 200,000 working age people steady. But in the current year, those 200,000 working age people are supporting 61,000 retirees, and 10 years out, that same 200,000 working age people are supporting 80,000 retirees. That's just an unbelievable change in 10 years. If there's even any remote accuracy in the projections, and it's even worse if you go out to 2040.
If you flip it, however, and say they're also supporting 8,000 fewer school-age children.
Yeah.
And school-age children cost a hell of a lot more than retirees in terms of use of service.
Yeah.
So you're also getting so it's very complex. You're getting you're freeing up money on one end and spending it on the other. And again, remember, as Jeff said last week, the gateway. Well, I guess gateway isn't hitting till closer to 2035 anyway. So that will change patterns of development in the county as well. So again, the fiscal crisis of increasing aging might, in theory, be mitigated somewhat by fewer working school-age population, if these projections are to be, believed completely, which they should be.
Well, I mean, they're just used for planning purposes. But again, to your point, which is spot on, it's really interesting looking at the school age population, the current school age population of roughly 70,000 falling to 62,000 by 35 and stable basically from 35 to 40. So, what a 9,000 student or 9,000 citizen decrease in school age population, which is what, like 13% from current levels, which is, I mean, enormous. So if you extend that and you say if you're then looking at a 13% projected reduction in school enrollment by extension, that's a massive number of kids. From 13% of 56,000. I mean, that's another 6,000 student reduction.
I think Ellen has her hands up.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that one of the things that we need to think about in terms of aging in place or an increasing retired population is that predictions are now that 50% of current group is going to live to 100 instead of an 85 to 90 year thing. So you're talking about that, unless they all move to Florida, okay, that you've got increased services to provide as people's ability to live in place and the services that are needed to keep them going. Those costs are going to go up, and supports that are necessary because they're not generating the same amount of income. Plus, as the group grows, it's pushing for services. Having already paid taxes for 40 years, they'd like to know what they're going to get out of that. So the push for increased services for the senior level, I'm not going to say it's going to rival what it costs to put a child through 12 years of public school, but it does shift where some of the push will come from and where some of the adjustments are going to have to be made. So it is a big demographic shift, and it has implications both ways. And with the increasing look at a decreasing birth rate, with many young people not starting their lives because they're in a transitional period trying to get a place to live and getting a job and supporting all those different things. I just think we're looking in the same way we talked last year about a transitional period and having to talk about a different narrative and help people understand what the change is. I think there are a number of significant factors that are going to make it necessary to look at this, not to believe things after 5 years, because there's a lot of things that are, subject to change there, but just to remember that this is a shift. This is a pyramid shift.
Thank you.
One quick question, Holly, from a spending perspective, do we have some sense of our spending per retiree? I mean, it's really easy to know what we're spending on a school age population per pupil because we have that data every single year.
I'll take a look, but I'll take a look and come back, but I doubt there's any reliable data on each specific type of spending for the elderly population. That might be very difficult to single that out.
But I'm thinking in terms of things about transportation to provide people access to things so they can still get to services if they're no longer mobile. All of those supports that are necessary, or to provide services within homes and to subsidize some of that for people who are, not, again, bringing in the same amount, and insurance and things like that are not going to cover some of that. It's just it's just, to me, that's one of the big pieces of the shift that we haven't really talked about.
I worked with Dean on the urban analytics on the APFO study where we did the costing of county services. We did not collect it by age. You would have to, I doubt the county, other than something like the Department of Aging, would have that number. But again, it's going to be much less than a student. So, and they're paying taxes as well. I think property taxes are capped at some point, aren't they, Holly?
There are some tax credits for seniors aging in place and other part on that there. But as everybody mentioned, it's a little complexity because there are all kinds of internal service side there, because a lot of service is not specific for them, but they are one of the users on that, and they maybe tend to use more on that. That's the harder part, like a transportation, right? Everybody can use it, but in reality, probably they are disproportionately using it more. That's on that. But I'll check with DCRS, see whether the aging office has some data on that there, and I'll follow up on that. Yeah. And here is just the agenda for next couple weeks on that there. So next week we have a school team will make a presentation on going over the superintendent's budget proposal, which is also an important subject. And also Jimmy Jen is our own committee member, and he will represent the Realtors Association, provide some trend analysis on the real estate, which is also important for the county on that. Now, after that, we pretty much wrap up most of the general presentations, more geared towards specific recommendations and discussion of report writing. Because in early February, their financial advisor, budget, and Dr. Clinch are going to talk about the county's debt, capital, personal income growth, as well as the revenue forecast on that. And so I just want to encourage people there to start think about the notes you've been taken so far, or your key takeaways, because in a couple of weeks or pretty soon, Todd and myself will start collecting input from you all towards more what are the key points we want to make in the report. So just want to remind folks on that. So with that, any questions?
Yeah, Holly, one thing. Next week we're going to be having our discussion on the public school system budget. In anticipation of that, would it be possible to put together just a very simple primer on what that process looks like? There's a superintendent's proposal, then it goes to, I don't even know exactly what the process is. When does it transition from the superintendent to the school board to the county executive? And I don't know what all those steps are and at what point the county
Yeah, I
has the
will.
opportunity. Yeah.
We'll provide that. But just very quick is, I mean, also Brian is here from school system and can feel free to chime in, and also Jackie. In general, is in the school system as a separated education entity, as a government entity, it has its own independent process on that. And usually the superintendent by early or mid-January will submit superintendent's proposal to the Board of Ed for review, and the Board of Ed will take that through multiple work sessions. And usually sometime in February, the board will approve the official request of budget operating CIP to the county. So once we accepted that, we received that, then the county executive will incorporate based on the county's understanding of affordability of funds, etc. And then the county will propose to include the executive proposed budget, including the allocation of county funding to the school system, to the county council by April 1st for executive proposed CIP, and usually mid-April for proposed operating budget, including the school-related piece on that. So that's a general process on that.
Yeah, if you could just
we can put
that would be helpful. And I think
make sure send to folks there.
If we look at and make sure we understand it from both an annual budget, annual operating perspective, but also an annual CIP perspective on who does what when, and then when does it actually get incorporated?
Right. Yeah. We'll clarify on that. Thank you.
Terrific. Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you.
And then is Rafiu on February 10th? Or no, is he on February 3rd?
February 3rd is the time that that finance will discuss about debt and also credit rating, and we will be joined by financial advisor based on current talk with the financial advisor and talk about credit rating as well. It's a lot of implication, and we'll try to put some capital information there as well because that's all relevant.
So if possible, just to plant a seed with Rafiu is let's make sure if possible to include what the county's balance sheet looks like, specifically its long-term debt, a dollar amount and annual cash flow associated with that debt, just so we understand it a little better. We always talk about 10% being kind of the limit that the rating agencies want to see, but I think it would be really helpful to know what are the components of those annual cash costs associated with the debt and what the specific debt amount is.
I think you're talking about the principal, like the retiring of the existing outstanding debt, right? That each year how much will be retired, something like that. Yeah, we'll follow up with you separately.
I know what he's talking about. I think he's adding that we should kind of quantify what the debt service means in terms of a dollar. What kind of is it to $1, 1 cent of the dollar that we spend on debt service, stuff like that. I think we can probably add that to it if he's we'll do the calculations.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is exactly. I mean, it's like if we look backwards 10 and forwards 10, we know exactly what our principal balances are, but we don't know what our annual payments are associated with those principal balances. And then we have debt that's been approved, but it's not outstanding. So at some point, that approved debt becomes outstanding debt after it's issued. So we have a pretty good feel probably over the next year, 2, maybe 3 years of what the new outstanding balances are going to be. But I think that's what I'd like to see, so we really know what are those principal balances today and what they're projected to be based on approved but not outstanding, because we know we're going to issue the vast majority of that's approved. So that's all I'm talking about. And then once we know the projected principal balances and the payment schedule associated with those, we know what our annual cash layout will be to support those principal balances. That's what I'm looking for, Rafiu.
Okay.
Okay.
Do our best to make sure that is in line with this conversation.
All right. Thank you both.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. I think we are about the time. No other. Alan, do you have a question or is your previous question? I saw your hands up. Okay, good. All right, that's from previous question. All right, thank you. Well, thanks again, everybody, for another round of great discussion and the presentation there. So we look forward to seeing you next time, which will be next Tuesday, virtually. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.